I start every book off with writing the first chapter to 3 chapters and seeing if I can get into the headspace to complete it. Because every idea seems like a good idea until you convince yourself that it's not.
Welcome to the Author Like a Boss podcast, the podcast for indie authors who want to improve their writing, up-level their marketing, make money with their books, and have fun doing it. Now, onto the show with your host, Ella Barnard.
Hello, everyone. This is Ella on Author Like a Boss, and I am here today, super excited to be here with Drew Avera. He grew up in Mississippi and joined the Navy at 17. He's been stationed in Virginia since 2001 and is deployed 4 times for operations in the Persian Gulf. He began his writing career in 2012 with NaNoWriMo and published it in 2013. He started with dystopian and moved to space opera in 2016. Since publishing the Allure Ian Wars, he has sold thousands of books and just released the 5th book in the series. The Allure Ian Wars is a mix of Star Wars and Firefly. Okay, Drew, I have to ask. First, I want you to tell us a little more about your journey, but please can you tell us a little bit about the mix of Star Wars and Firefly? Because that's fun.
All right. Well, the Star Wars comes in with the Galactic Empire trying to gain control of the galaxy, and the Firefly portion comes in with the fact that there's a crew of a ship called the Replicade, and they're kind of a ragtag bunch. None of them are exactly the same.
Are they space cowboys?
Not necessarily. They're just trying to survive. They have to depend on each other to survive. In the Allure Ian Wars, if you go against the Emperor, it's a death penalty. So the worlds that try to stand up and refuse to kneel, they get destroyed. So these are basically refugees from the Empire. And they're trying to find a place to call home, but everywhere they land, they discover something or someone that either sends them running or threatens to kill them. So that's kind of a story about them. It's not so much about the war as it is about what they're doing as the war's happening around them.
Oh, cool.
So my books are a little bit more character based as opposed to the, I guess it would be the technology and the statistics of the war and this, that, and the other.
I like that. I love, because I'm sure there's plenty of action because there's a huge war going on, but you just get to follow these characters that I'm sure over the number of books you grow to really love.
Right. And some of them you hate, and then I just tried to bring you and them closer so maybe you care about them. I may or may not kill them later. It's one of those situations.
That's something that I find can be very appealing about being an author, is the ability to kill off the people that you don't like. You're like, it's imaginary.
It is. If it was real life, I'd be in prison numerous times.
Yes, I know. I'm like, anybody, you guys, if you have somebody that you don't like in your life, and you've never thought about being an author, but maybe you think maybe I would, maybe I wouldn't. And the thing that might take you over the edge into actually doing it is you can always name a character or base a character on someone you don't like and then kill them, and nobody ever has to know. It can all be just in your mind.
That's true. I've killed friends and enemies fictionally. Fictionally. Right.
It's not like
the surprising thing is when people ask you to put them in a book and kill them.
Oh.
It's kind of crazy. Like, made me go out really awesome. All right, man.
Like a hero, dude. Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, so tell me how, you told me a little bit about how you started, but tell me about your writing journey, your author journey.
Okay, well, I should probably start with my reading journey.
Ooh.
Since that's what inspired it. I grew up really liking comic books. And when I say liking, I mean, in probably about the time I was 15 or 16, I probably had 4 boxes of about 1,000 comic books each. I took collecting to a entirely different realm. It wasn't like I just liked Batman and only collected Batman, I bought everything that was on the rack
Wow.
with my dad's money. So, but my dad, he kind of fed that, basically saying, if you're going to read it, I'll buy it, because he believed that reading was good, a positive thing.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that I wasn't too keen on reading books, I guess he saw that as a suitable substitute. And when I said I didn't like reading books, I would cheat on book reports. I'd read like 10 or 15 pages, make it up as I went, and not score very good grades. And I think that's because I didn't know what I wanted to read. I didn't understand what genre and things of that nature were most appealing to me. And if you look at comic books, people talk about fantastical worlds and things like that. So I thought fantasy was the closest thing to a book that I would want to read based on comic books, but I completely ignored science fiction. When I was 16, though, I did find a book that caught my eye, and it was based on a comic book character, so it was kind of an easy sell. But actually, I would save up my lunch money and go to the store once every week or so, and I'd spend it on new comics. And just so happened that whenever I went with my lunch money, there was no new comics on the shelf, but that book caught my eye, so I got that instead. And it was written by Peter David. It was a book called What Savage Beast, and it was an Incredible Hulk story. And I was never a big fan of the Incredible Hulk, but I figured a novel based on a comic book character might be cool. And I read it cover to cover 3 times in a row.
Wow.
So I went from not reading books because I didn't like them to, holy crap, I found a book that I love. And since I've probably read it maybe 2 more times, it's not like I carry it around like a Bible and, it's a holy book in my collection, but it is sitting on my bookshelf and its pages are yellowed and it looks like a 25-year-old book. But after reading that, where previously I wanted to be a comic book artist and or a rock star, I kind of wanted to write a book at that point. I never thought about writing comics because it didn't seem as glamorous as drawing comic book characters to me. But writing a book had matched the appeal of being a rock star and or a comic book artist. And in the years since, I think I started about 3 different books. I'd get about a page or 2 into it, realize that writing a book's really hard, and then I would quit. And all of that came to a head when I turned 30. So for 14 years, I wanted to write a book. And when I turned 30, I'm reflecting on my life. I never became the rock star. I never became the comic book artist. I spent 12 years by that time in the Navy and had everything that I wanted. I was financially secure, wife, kids, house, even 2 cats that got on my nerves. But
more than you wanted.
Right. But I didn't necessarily hit one of the things that I thought were going to feed my soul. One of those situations. So I decided that I would either try again with the music career, try again with the comic book artist stuff, or try to write a book. And having been in several bands up to that point, the more I thought about that, the more I wanted to run away from it. Because playing in these dive bars for your friends and the other bands is not my idea of a good time. And I had injured my hand in high school, and that basically put an end to my drawing for about 6 or 8 months, as I had a brace that I had to wear on my hand. And my handwriting's terrible. I could play a doctor on TV if I needed to. And I can't even draw a circle without discomfort and stuff. So that didn't seem like a good suitable thing to try to pursue. So I went with the book thing, and I wrote about 10,000 words of a fantasy. And
unexpected.
Stopped. Yeah, completely stopped. I don't know if I wrote myself into a corner because I was so new to writing that I just knew I wasn't digging it. It wasn't gelling with me, and I decided to quit. But I don't know about other people that are listening or you, but usually whenever I'm pursuing something, I do a lot of research on it. And I do a lot of my research on YouTube because I like instructional videos. and I like seeing somebody's face whenever they're telling me something. And one of the things I was doing at that time was looking up videos of fantasy authors, because I thought that was a close proximity to what comic books were. And you know how most social media platforms, Facebook, YouTube, all of that, once you've looked at a few things, it starts recommending things.
Yeah.
So after quitting writing before I even got started, I started getting these other recommendations. And it's really hard to quit something when it keeps coming back into your life. And I caught onto a video. I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was National Novel Writing Month was mentioned in it. And I was like, what is this? So I looked it up. It piqued my interest just enough for me to do a Google search. And in 2012, for National Novel Writing Month, they said winners received a certificate of completion, which, you know, if you've done it, you'd realize that there's something you print out. But it's cool. But the thing that got me was 5 free paperback copies of your book. And I was like, how cool would that be to have a copy of my book in my hand after writing it? So I was like, I think I'll do it. And I don't do anything where I cheat. One of the rules was you had to start on November 1st and finish by the end of the month of a completely new manuscript. And I know some people see that as, I'll only count the words that I wrote in November. But I was taking it, 100% seriously. So I started a book. But that time, I realized there was a difference between fantasy and science fiction, despite the fact that they're both on the same bookshelf.
Yeah, I know. They're very different. I think it's a little bit misleading for them to be combined.
I mean, you can mix them in a way. You can have magic in science fiction and it completely work. But to say that fantasy and science fiction is the same thing is a lie.
Agreed.
So once I realized that this is the difference between it's fantasy and science fiction, not them together, I realized, oh, this is the stuff that I like to do. So let me try writing something like that. And as I was gearing up for it, I was messing around on the forum, and there was a sci-fi forum for the NaNoWriMo site, and everybody was talking about what book they were going to be writing. And on one of the threads that I commented on, Hugh Howey commented on it, and that meant nothing to me. But the response to Hugh Howey responding did catch my eye, and there was this one guy, OMG, Hugh Howey, oh, I love your books, blah, blah, blah. And all I could think was, who is this guy, and why is he getting all this adulation? So I did a Google search and figured out who Hugh Howey was. And NaNoWriMo, they got that thing where you could friend people on there. So I friended him, and he accepted, and we actually started talking. And an interesting thing was I had previously gotten into this writing forum where it was supposed to be a critique group, but these guys were brutal. Basically anything that you submitted was not written correctly. And when you're brand new and you don't know what you're doing, despite the fact that they're probably right, it's really disheartening. And I'm not saying that I'm thin-skinned, but I got to the point where I just wanted to say F it and throw my hands up in the air with it. But I had mentioned that in one of our conversations, and he had a colorful way, and I'm trying to keep my language good, but he had a colorful way of saying, do what you want to do. Like, why are you worried about what these other people are saying? Do they have published books? Of which I had no idea. But he's like, just do what you want to do and do what you want to do with it. And I took that advice, and I didn't listen to anybody else about it. And feeling free enough to write what I wanted to, and feeling confident that I'd found a genre that really did match what I loved, and having that carrot in front of me to try to get those 5 paperbacks was all the motivation that I needed to sit down and bust out my first book. I wrote the whole thing on an iPhone too. I didn't even sit down at a computer the whole time I was writing it. I just did everything on my iPhone, and I'd email the files to myself. And that's basically how I became a writer.
So where were you writing it on your, like, are you just at home on your iPhone, or?
Oh, I would, anywhere I was
Okay.
I'd get to work early and sit in my car, or during the lunch break, I'd find a place to kind of sit and where nobody would mess with me, and I'd do it. At the time, I'm still in the Navy now, but at the time, I was an instructor for the Navy teaching Super Hornet electrical systems. So we were pretty liberal with our lunch breaks. Instead of having a stringent 45-minute or hour-long lunch break, I could let the class go at whatever time I wanted and have them come back whatever time, provided that I didn't get behind on the lesson plan. So I was pretty efficient by that point of having enough time to eat, enough time to do what I wanted to do, and be pretty fair to everybody. So I took advantage of that, especially with it being the holiday season. My goal was to be done before Thanksgiving because we were going out of town. I can't remember if we were going to Mississippi to see my family or going to Pennsylvania to see my wife's family. Either way, there was a road trip involved, and I wanted to be done before hitting the road. So I think it was the 23rd was the last day that I put words on that book, and I completed the 50,000 words in that much time.
Wow. And then you said that within the next year, because it's obviously NaNoWriMo's at the end of the year. So in the next year, you published it?
I did. I self-edited, which is, looking back, was dumb. I did my own cover. Looking back, that was dumb. I didn't have anybody look at it beforehand. Looking back, that was dumb. But I did. I did the best that I could with it. Just doing everything myself, but that was dumb. And I published it in March of 2013, and I sold like 5 copies. And it was a little bit exciting with a little bit of disappointment there at the end. But I was just hungry enough to want to keep going.
Yeah.
So
I think Drew. Okay, go ahead.
I was gonna say, once you get bit by the bug, you're kind of infected for life, I think.
That first good review, and you're like, oh, even if it's just somebody saying, I liked it. Good story.
I don't know who Amazon customer is, but thank you. I love you.
There is something there's something pretty amazing the first time a stranger leaves a review and gives you some feedback, and you're like, that person, I never met that person before, and now they know what my thoughts were. Like my thoughts are something very appealing. And I want to point out, Drew, even though you say that was dumb. I think the hardest part for a lot of people is completing that first book. Like, because
no doubt,
like completing the first book is the hardest part. And and I am one of those people who I've had the bug of perfectionist, and the benefit of being a perfectionist is that, it can never be perfect enough. I never have to complete it. And then therefore I never have to be judged that it's imperfect. And the good thing about just getting that first one done is that it's done then. And the first one will never be perfect. It's your first book. It's not even possible for it to be perfect because it's the first one. But once you get it done and it's behind you, then you can move on to the next one and it will be better.
That is 100% truth. Though when I published it, I thought it was perfect. Because, you look at a manuscript for a few months and you don't see any more typos, and I didn't know anything about really doing edits. So you do a word search or a grammar check or spell check on a Word document, and it gives you erroneous stuff.
If you spell there, correctly, but in the wrong,
And that was one of the early criticisms and I didn't know what it was at the time, because I didn't pay attention in high school English class just enough to get by. I didn't know what syntax was. So people were leaving comments on their reviews like, this is a good story, but there's a lot of syntax errors. And I didn't know what that meant. So I'm like, screw you, buddy.
I love, and I want to point out, it's a good story, but syntax errors can be fixed. Like that, you can pay somebody or get a buddy who knows a lot about English and get it fixed, but the story can be improved as well. But getting a good story, that's the most important part. Like having that feedback of good story, that's the hardest part to get right the first time. And it's not hard to get right. It's the thing that your readers want the most is a good story. So, okay. So now you've written more books, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, a lot.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Okay. Well, I finished that book and I published it, and I had the forethought to make a series, to write it with the intention of it being a series, which having that forethought was a really good idea, except I'm ADD, and everything else that popped in my mind after that was vying for attention. So I didn't actually complete that series for about 3 years or so, despite putting out all kinds of different stuff. It's kind of like, boiling noodles. You take some out and toss it on the wall and see what sticks, see if it's good enough. And I wasted a lot of time writing stuff that wasn't very marketable without going back to the thing that actually was a viable product, which was that first book, because it was a book one of a series. And the time I think the Hunger Games movies were coming out, so dystopian in my mind was really hot. Hugh Howey writes a lot of dystopian, and he was the first indie author that was successful that I knew of, and I was reading his stuff, but also like thrillers. So I tried my hand at all kinds of different stuff, and some of it's still up on Amazon, some of it's under pen names, some of it was taken down for the sake of everyone else. But most of it, this stuff, what I was doing was, kind of spinning my wheels, and I start every book off with writing the first chapter to 3 chapters and seeing if I can get into the headspace to complete it, because every idea seems like a good idea until you convince yourself that it's not. And the best way to convince yourself is to get into the story and realize that you hate it. So if you hate it, someone else is going to hate it, which is why I have a hard drive that's a graveyard of incomplete manuscripts that's probably twice the size of what I have published. And but eventually dystopian kind of got tiresome for me, and I was looking for something else to do. And people have been telling me to do military sci-fi for a long time. Take your military background and write some fiction with it, But to me, it seemed like it would be too close to real life where it wouldn't be therapeutic. And I would just kind of shake my head and say, no, I don't want to do that. But the thing that changed my mind of all things was I went on deployment in 2015. I deployed a few days before Thanksgiving, and I missed every holiday from Thanksgiving to the 4th of July. And in between that time, my birthday and my daughter's birthday. So there's a lot of life events that you miss when you're deployed for 8 months. And I saw it coming. And I'm very much the type of person who, when their morale is down, productivity goes down. So when you're missing out on all the holidays that are very family oriented, it's kind of a bummer.
Yeah.
So I decided I was going to, if nothing else, not write for deployment. I wasn't going to worry about my writer career. I wasn't going to worry about anything except just getting through it. And for the first 4 months of that deployment, that's exactly what I did. And sometimes you just need the right fuel to inspire you to do something anyway. And that's not just because you're going on deployment or dealing with a hard time. It could be you're just kind of tired of writing in general. And it's because your inspiration well is too low. And the first port that we hit was Croatia. It was a little town called Split. And the malls have Wi-Fi and the bars have Wi-Fi. But everybody goes to either the mall or these places that are very close to the fleet landing where the ship's at. And one of the things that me and my livery buddies would do is we tried to avoid everybody else. We see these people every day. So we would go down these little alleys into areas of this town that, unless you had a map or were familiar with it, you didn't know they were there. And we'd find these excellent restaurants and just places to hang out where, in America, you go to a restaurant and you're sitting there for 3 hours at a table. The waitress is trying to find a polite way to tell you to get the hell out, because you're taking up their tip and potential to make money. But in other countries, especially poorer countries, they just like having people there. The more people that are there, as long as they have seats open, it makes it look like there's a lot happening there. So we didn't bump into that kind of attitude thing with the locals there. And the great thing was finding places that had Wi-Fi. You can FaceTime your family, this, that, and the other. Well, in one of the moments that I was kind of perusing Wi-Fi, I was going through iTunes and I was trying to find free videos to download just to watch before I went to sleep at night. And I found that episode 1 of The Expanse was a free download on iTunes. And I'd never heard of the books. I didn't even know the books existed, but it looked like it was science fiction. It looked interesting, stuff in space. I'm down, and I downloaded it. And if I'm lying, I'm dying. It took 6 hours on crap Wi-Fi to download a 45-minute episode of a science fiction show. And my livery buddy's like, come on, man, we've been sitting in this restaurant for like 4 hours. We should probably go do something else. And I'm just like, come on, man, like, let me download this thing. And it took forever, but my dedication paid off. And once we pulled out, going back out to sea, after the first work day, I decided I would watch it in my rack before I went to sleep. And I don't know if you've ever seen a picture of what a berthing on a ship looks like, but you sleep in a thing that's about 6 foot long and about 2.5 feet wide and 2.5 feet tall. So they call it a coffin, and it very much feels like one. But I would Velcro my phone up to the top of the rack above me, and I would watch it. And even though it was a tiny screen, it kind of looks big when it's like close to your face. So it's like watching real TV. So, I watched that episode and I was blown away. I was like, oh my gosh, like, where's the next episode? I don't have Wi-Fi on the ship and I don't have the means of downloading it. But I couldn't wait to pull into the next port and try to get the next episode. So I think the next day I decided I was going to Google it to try to get more information about it. And that's when I discovered it was based on a book series. And it didn't take me very long to get on Amazon and find the books. And my wife handles all the finances, because when I'm gone as much as I am, if I was in charge, we would miss payments.
There's no power, no water.
Right. Right. Who needs a house, So she handles all that. And instead of just going on, because I'm probably 8 hours ahead and I want to order this. It's much easier to just have her order everything and then have it sent out to me. Because I can always say, hey, I need more t-shirts and this, that, and the other. And I was only a month in deployment, if that. So it's not like I was running low on stuff, except morale, for being gone for so long. But I said, hey, I really would like these books. She goes, that's all you want, just the books? I'm like, yeah. She goes, done. So she orders it. I think she ordered me some candy and stuff to send out too. But I devoured those books. And it was the same feeling after reading those as it was reading that Peter David book when I was in high school. Just, I was floored with it. And she got me the first 3 books that came in like a set. So I just went from one to the next. And I'm just devouring these things. And I just so happened to have a guy check in not long after who was kind of like me and really liked science fiction. And I talked to him about the books. He goes, really, they're that good? I was like, yes, man, they are that good. So he borrowed the first one, and then he became an Expanse fan, and he ordered all the books. and he was trying to get called up to where I was at because he wanted to talk to me about the books, but he didn't want me spilling spoilers. So if anybody read the books faster than me, it would be that guy. He was probably putting in about 4 or 5 hours of reading after work, trying to get caught up. But that's kind of what inspired me to try it out. The Expanse isn't so much military sci-fi as it is space opera, but it does have military elements. And I saw that it could be done in a way that was subtle. It's not about being in the military. It's about a character that is around military. So I decided to try my hand at it. And I think in May, we were supposed to come home in June. So I decided that I would try to see if I could get a full book written before I got home. And then it didn't look like it was happening. So I guess the Navy decided to extend us a month so I could finish that book. At least that's what I tell myself, because that's how it worked out. But it's a real bummer because we were supposed to be home, I think, around my birthday. Maybe a few days before or a few days after. So I was super excited. But instead, probably 2 or 3 weeks before going home, they're like, hey guys, we're getting extended. And that's like a kick to the gut. But we came home after 4th of July. And we had a 4th of July celebration where they were shooting all the guns on all the ships in our battle group. So fireworks didn't do anything for me after seeing something like that. The display and the sound. I mean, it's like trying to think of something that would really describe the sensation of being around these huge guns that are going off. Because aircraft carriers don't have very big guns, but the ships in our battle group have cannons, basically. Modern day versions.
Do you have a description somewhere in your book?
No, I don't think I do, because it all happens in space where there's no sound. But I think I have a video on Dropbox of me being on the flight deck and them shooting the guns, and it's awesome. Every time they would fire, you feel the vibration going from the flight deck up your body, because everything's metal, so it just reverberates. Very powerful stuff. So I guess I got that out of it. That, and I got to finish my book. So I guess the Navy was looking out for me.
There's a couple of parts in your story where it just so happened, this kind of thing it just so happened. And I sometimes, just so happened I ran across the Expanse. It just so happened that I had plenty of time to download it. Just so happened, I sometimes think, and I don't want to get too into it, but I do like to bring attention to that. I think things don't always just so happen. It just so happens that I had time to finish my book, and now you have a growing author career that may or may not have happened if those other things just hadn't happened. Just so happened.
And that's absolutely true. Not trying to argue that point at all. Mm-hmm. Where I was at before, I had some stories and some anthologies that did well, but I actually made all my money off those anthologies. That was like I think the first anthology paid me like $100, and the next one paid me like $200 or something like that. But that was the most money that I made as a writer. To that point, I was making something like $14 or $20 a month, having probably 20 things published on Amazon. I was trying to put stuff out as fast as I could, but they were all short stories, and I don't think people were wanting to drop money on short stories unless they were large collections of them. Mm-hmm. And then, really, my books, they are kind of short. I write somewhere between 50 to 60,000 word books. So if you looked at mine next to another one on a bookshelf where a publisher demands a 100,000 word book, mine do look smaller. But I think a lot of those books have some fluff in them. Mm-hmm. And I'm more of like just get to the point and bring the plot along. I jokingly say that I write books for people who are attention deficit, because you can probably read through my books in a few hours and be satisfied. You're not going to be reading it, a couple hours a night for a week.
Mm-hmm.
So hopefully there's an appeal there.
I think if you have a good story and at the end they're satisfied, I'm not too much of like a word count or word length snob. Like if it's a good story and people are buying it. So are people buying it? So your series now, have you moved on? Are you getting much more success? And how did you start? How did that happen? Let's shift to the marketing and how the success and marketing has affected the sales side.
Well, I published the first one a few months after I got home. I actually had somebody edit it. I didn't do it all myself. And I jumped on the cross promo train with some newsletter swaps to kind of help give it some life. And it did pretty well right off the bat, especially when compared to where I was at previously. I went from making less than $20 a month to making over $100 a month. And, I use that loosely. It was probably something about $200 or $300 that month that I launched it. Mm-hmm. And I launched it at 99 cents. So you got to sell quite a few copies in order to make, that much money.
Yeah.
You could pay a cable bill, on a 99-cent book launch, and that's a lot more books sold than it might sound like.
Mm-hmm.
And, I quickly tried to get the others out in the series. My ADD kicked in. I did some other stuff in between. I just launched the 5th book, and I'm doing what I'm calling the Mega Allure Ian War sale, and everything is 99 cents right now, and they're selling really well. So I'll go back to normal price. It's a countdown deal, so I don't have much choice.
Mm-hmm.
But those prices will go back in like 5 or 7 days back to their normal price, and hopefully the rank boost will do pretty well, and I get some residuals off of it. But people seem to be excited about this book series, where the previous series not so much. And I think because dystopian is kind of a downer. If you look at where society's at right now, we have a lot of bad news kind of everywhere. So escaping into a world that's full of bad news and trouble probably isn't as appealing to people. And despite the fact that the Allure Ian Wars is about an empire that's destroying planets, as grim as that might be, the banter and everything back and forth with these characters, it's not grim and tragic. They have hard times, but there's hope. There's an element of hope in each of these books. So I think people are gravitating more towards the series than they did with my dystopian stuff.
Yeah, I think you are absolutely right that people are, that it's good to explore your market. And I also think, and I don't know, tell me if you believe this as well, that there's an aspect of putting your heart into a book, like what feels most in alignment with what's true for you,
right,
makes a better book. So if you, and I don't know you that well, Drew, but if you are somebody who does better when your morale is up, because you're more productive when you have a better morale, I am also one of those people, then you're probably going to put more of your truer self into your books that have the hope in them, even through tough times, versus dystopian. Does that, I don't know. Am I inferring too much, or does that sound right?
No, I think you're right. I think when I'm in a pissy mood, I write really pissy fiction. And then whenever I'm in a good mood, it might not be happy, but it's definitely not grim. So I think there's an element to it. Your attitude kind of dictates where a story's going to go. And
yeah.
Sometimes I can tell, reading back on it, that I was in a bad mood for something, but I try not to be in a bad mood. If I'm in a bad mood, I'd rather not write anyway.
Yeah.
Unless there's a deadline. And thankfully, I don't have a publisher breathing down my neck about it. So I recently took a week off, and I didn't intend to take a week off. I intended to take 3 days off. But I just finished Regime Change, and I was like, I want to jump back onto this other book so I can have another series starter to kind of have a reader magnet for people. And I forced a day of writing that I didn't really feel like, which sometimes that's important. And then I was like, you know what? I think I need the break. I just finished this one. I might as well kind of enjoy it. And I was going to take the 3 days off, and I went to work. I work weekends, Friday through Monday, and on Saturday and Sunday, I try to write a little bit. And I realized there was an issue with my work computer where Word kept crashing, and I couldn't type and it register all the letters that I was typing. It was something weird. And no, if it's not going to register every time I hit the key, I'm not going to waste my time trying to edit that garbage. So I just said, you know what? I'm not going to do anything.
Did it just so happen that you ended up needing those extra days because it was refreshing? And
I think it just so happened did. Because today was my first day getting back in the seat, and I busted out 1,000 words like it was nothing. Where previously it was like 500 words written, and I was like, oh god, I don't feel like doing this. So it was a lot more refreshing. Yeah. And when I say I took a writing day off, I mean, I'm still doing admin stuff. I updated my website, and I contemplated where the story was going to go. There was quite a few things writer related that I was doing, but as far as butt and chair and trying to knock out X amount of words for the daily grind, I just didn't even focus on it. And it was glorious.
It was glorious. We call in the Megan and I have an Author Boss Academy. And what we call what you did is active rest, which I'm sure you know. Like, we call it active rest, like when you're exercising, you do your legs, and then you do the next day your arms, and you're still moving towards your goal. And so you're still doing website stuff, you're still doing all these things, but you're letting your creativity, or that part of you that's constantly doing that, it's resting while you're still, doing the boxer shuffle or whatever during in between. So
I was working on some music too. So I mean, I was still doing creative stuff, just focusing on my creative outlet elsewhere.
Mm-hmm. I love that. So really quick, I have a couple more questions I want to ask you. So what has been the most effective marketing tool and strategy that you've used for selling your book?
Newsletter swaps.
Okay.
Assuming that you already have a newsletter. Having a newsletter is probably the most effective, but then outside of that, doing occasional newsletter swaps to share other people's stuff with your readers, and then have your stuff shared with other people's readers. That way you're not constantly pushing to the same people.
Mm-hmm. Do you tell, how do you get people on your newsletter?
I've done a few things. Insta Freebie was probably the one that kind of helped me get a whole bunch on my list. But now I still have it, but that's not my number one go-to thing. I do these giveaways with a bunch of other sci-fi authors, and we do either monthly or every other month, where we chip in some ebooks to give out to people, and in return we share it with our newsletters, and then people subscribe to whoever they want to subscribe to. And at the end of the promotion, everybody gets a list of names. I don't mean to be rude by saying this, but I would think that probably the people that were signing up off of each other's newsletters were probably people more apt to buy than the people that I've gotten from Insta Freebie. Maybe that's just a coincidence, or it just so happens that people on Insta Freebie want free stuff, and people who sign up from other people's newsletters are already primed to purchase stuff that they like. So matter of fact, I remember getting some responses back from doing a 99-cent book launch, and somebody saying, why isn't it free? And I was like, that's a good question, because I don't get paid for free, and I'm trying to make a living. I think I might have unsubbed them. I don't remember.
You're like, I'm subscribing you on my own. I don't need.
I wish I could have marked their email as spam.
So you get a group of other sci-fi authors. And I'm going to go into this a little bit for anybody who's maybe new or isn't as familiar with this kind of stuff. The benefit of going in on giveaways with other authors is, one, you're not looking necessarily just for all new people to sign up for your newsletters. These are people who have already expressed enough interest in signing up to a newsletter that they're on somebody else's sci-fi author newsletter.
Correct.
So they're already kind of filtered out all of the people, who are just folk. And you've narrowed it down to at least people who are pretty close to, if not exactly, your ideal customer.
Exactly.
Yeah. And then I imagine when you all go in the giveaway together, you all put in a certain amount of money or books or what have you. And so you can have an amazingly big giveaway without a huge amount of investment on your part. Right?
Absolutely.
And do you have different authors each time to kind of rotate so you're still not all selling to just the same people on the same newsletters?
There is a level of people who get filtered in and out, but it's not one of those situations where, hey man, you've been in like the last 3, you need to take a break. It's more like, hey, we got this going on. If you want to take part, jump on. And some people are like, oh, I think I'll take a break. They kind of do it on their own. And there's always new authors springing up who are trying to build their list. So those are the people that probably benefit from it the most. If you've already got a list of, we'll say 5,000, and you're already doing swaps with some of these people anyway, then they're already seeing your stuff. So maybe they don't have an interest in signing up to your newsletter, or maybe y'all have very similar people on your newsletters. So you're really not hitting 5,000 on this other person's newsletter. You might be hitting 1,800, and maybe none of those people are interested. You never know. But if you're somebody that has 500 on their list and you're in a group of 20 people that have 5,000 subscribers, you'll probably benefit really great. And then you'll go from having a free MailChimp account to now you have to pay for it. And you're like, oh my God.
I better hurry up and get my books out so I can pay for my newsletters.
Yeah. It definitely adds up.
Yeah. So do you, then after you get everybody on your newsletter, through these giveaways, then that's when you send them newsletters and you invite them to purchase your book?
Correct. I usually send a welcome, and it's sad to see some people unsub from the welcome aboard email, but my bank account appreciates it because you get in these different tiers and MailChimp gets expensive. So, I'm not trying to curate a huge list for having a huge list sake. I prune my list a lot. Try to get rid of the non-responders and things of that nature. It's not about how many you have. It's about how many quality you have.
I love that. I think when they're first starting, the numbers are very encouraging. Having lots of people is very encouraging. But I think after you've done it for a little while, and if you can be this aware in advance, the quality of the people is so much more important than how many people. If you had 1,000 people who bought everything that you published versus 10,000 people who maybe sometimes will open your email up, you're going to want those 1,000 people who buy everything you publish.
Absolutely.
Okay. So what advice would you give to other people who want to be successful authors?
Don't listen to advice from people that aren't doing or experiencing the level of success that you're looking for. You should always be looking at the higher tier. Those people who are doing things right consistently and are consistently successful. And if you go in some groups, you'll see these people saying they launched their first book and sold $10,000 worth of books. And everyone wants to know how they did that. Even the people that are successful for a long period of time. How did you launch that book to sell $10,000 worth? I I think that's everybody's immediate reaction, because if you can make $10,000 in a month, you're killing it. You're basically full time, and you can replace your day job without a second thought. I wouldn't do it doing that for 1 month, but if it was like a year consistently, that's what you were doing. Yeah, it's kind of a no-brainer. But somebody's got a backlist of 12 books, and they slowly have gotten to the point where they're able to quit their day job because of a consistent output of material and a consistent marketing strategy that is proven. Those are the people that probably have the best advice. They show longevity. It's not something that you can say, oh, luck was involved, because for everybody's launch, some level of luck will be involved. But the people that are doing consistent things right, they make their own luck. So those are the people that I would seek advice from.
That's awesome. And that's why we're so grateful that you're here, Drew.
I appreciate it, because that's the only advice that I would listen from me, is not to listen to advice from, somebody that's at my level or below.
Yeah.
I don't need to be listening to somebody that's in the same boat that I'm in.
Yep. And one last thing, where can our listeners find you? Sign up for your newsletter, buy your books. What's the best place?
DrewAvera.com.
Okay, you guys, and that's spelled DrEWAVERA. .com. .com.
I'm a .com. I'm legit.
Yeah. I tell people, I'm like, if you're looking for a pen name, make sure it has a .com.
Yeah, that's true. I spent years .wordpress.com in it, and finally I was like, I'm just going to buy this domain. I wish I had a better name, though, something that wasn't hard to pronounce or hard to remember how to. Yeah, it's actually pronounced Avery, but everybody thinks I'm Spanish, so they're like, Avera. They're rolling the R with it and everything.
Yeah.
Like, no, I'm just a basic white guy, man.
Dude. Oh my gosh. Okay, so thank you so much, Drew, for being here with us. And you are always welcome to come back and let us know how things are going once you get to that 10,000 per month and you've quit your day job.
Oh, fingers crossed.
Yeah. I have a feeling that you're going to get it. I just have a good feeling about that, because you're doing the work. You're taking the action and doing the work and listening to the people who are purchasing from you. So that's what I think you got to do. So plus I'm setting that intention for you. I'm kind of a woo-woo type of person. So I'm like, Drew, he's going to get it. It might take a little while, but it's going to happen. What's going to happen is it just so happened.
It just so happened.
There's going to be a couple more. It just so happened. And all of a sudden you're going to be like,
just so happened I took some good advice and achieved my goals.
Yeah, it just so happened that I worked real hard, took some good advice, and a couple other just so happened. And now I get to be home with my kids for every holiday and birthday. So
that's going to be the great part.
Yep. Okay. Thank you so much, Drew. And thank you everybody here for being here on Author Like a Boss.
If you love the Author Like a Boss podcast, we'd love for you to subscribe, rate, and give a review on iTunes. Until next time.